let's go right to D.C., where Doug Luzader joins us with the latest on the shooting. Doug.
Good morning. The accused gunman is expected to face 2 federal charges for now in what is just the latest close call for the president. Here's what we know about the suspect, identified as 31-year-old Cole Allen of California. Now, he ran past a Secret Service checkpoint, allegedly, in the hotel lobby and was apprehended unharmed. Investigators say he was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and a number of knives, and that he was a guest at the Washington Hilton, which has played host to this dinner for decades. Now, in federal court today, we expect at least 2 initial charges: using a firearm during a crime of violence and assault on a federal officer with a dangerous weapon. And of course, a Secret Service agent was struck in his bulletproof vest, saved by that vest, though. A Washington Post report, meantime, questioned security at the event. When so many officials gather in one place for official functions, such as an inauguration or a State of the Union address, the Secretary of Homeland Security, it typically puts the Secret Service in charge of coordinating all security through a formal designation known as National Special Security Event. There was no such delegation on Saturday night. Now, this follows a number of security incidents for the president. In July of 2024, there was the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. Months later, another attempt at Trump International Golf Club in Florida, and then, of course, Saturday's dinner here in Washington. Now, President Trump says this all bolsters his case for a new White House ballroom and pressed for the dinner to be rescheduled in the next 30 days. Back to you guys.
All right, Doug Luzader live for us in Washington. Doug, thank you. Let's bring in former Navy SEAL and FBI Special Agent Jonathan Gilliam. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. A lot to get to here with you. And I want to start out with event security, because the Wall Street Journal is quoting a guest who attended the White House Correspondents Dinner, and he pointed out what he perceived as the lack of security in entering the hotel. This quote says they could enter the hotel by simply showing a dinner ticket or a copy of an invite to one of several pre-dinner receptionists. The tickets were reviewed by staff, but weren't scanned, and there was no further identification checks. What needs to change even now to keep this president safe?
Well, according to what you just told me, they need to add security. I mean, that's basically sounds like they had no security at that. I don't know who is running the Secret Service. Who's running these details. And I would say that basically every detail, with the exception of diplomats and probably even some of those individuals, those details were there last night. President, vice president, and most of the cabinet. So why, first of all, would you not have a perimeter that is set up outside of the hotel? Yes, I know it's a hotel, but it's Washington, D.C. They should realize, especially after Reagan was shot there, that they have to have a strong perimeter. They should realize that after the president was actually shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, and then almost shot again in Florida. And this wasn't 20 years ago. This was just this past year. So I'm not clear on who is coming up with this protocol and why they're still following it. Another thing I'll say that needs to happen is the security outside and the security inside both need to be restructured and revamped. And we have to stop looking at nobody got killed or the president didn't get killed, right, so it was a success. This was not a success. And I understand President Trump. I mean, he's been the recipient of one of these bullets, and he survived. So from his perspective, he would see this as a success. But for the director of DHS, for Kash Patel, for others, for Attorney General to go on other networks and this network and brag about law enforcement, why can't we criticize the Secret Service?
Well,
this is
Jonathan,
not reflect on the president.
I'm going to push back on that because I was in the vicinity, and I want to explain what the security situation looked like to me. And yes, you may have a valid question. I'm not going to question you on whether or not the Secret Service should have been in charge of everything. But when you look at what we saw at the vicinity, I would describe it as hard, soft, hard. The Fox News van had trouble getting within a mile of the vicinity because the exterior perimeter was so tight. But Where we find issues is when we get right up to the venue itself, and then 100% right to ask questions. Why I, with a little piece of paper, show it to a random young little volunteer, and she lets me in. I agree that that is where the problems arise. I will say, Jonathan, when we made it closer to the ballroom, that is where the big boys with the big guns were, making sure that we could not get closer. And that is ultimately what stopped. So I want to be clear as to the various layers, but I think you raise an overall good point. Why isn't maximum security the default? Why do we have to continue to have these discussions, especially at an event when the president is there? I share your concern and your questioning why maximum security isn't the default automatically.
But Todd, I get that there was a perimeter for vehicles to stop vehicle-borne improvised explosives, but we have to realize that, first of all, like I said, criticizing is not condemning. Yes, what they did there in that perimeter to keep vehicles out, that's great. But obviously it didn't keep an attacker out. The inside perimeter is just as important as the outside perimeter because an attacker will figure out how to use those vulnerabilities. We saw that in this individual's manifesto where he literally said he was shocked at how bad the security was. So he showed you he was able to walk in unchecked, check into the hotel room, and then come down there and walk past all those big guys that you're talking about. Because ultimately, even an outside perimeter to stop a car bomb could still allow an individual to come in and walk in with a bomb if they are not checking for those things.
That's true.
And when you do this security, Todd, you have to look at who, when, why, how, and where an attack could happen, the avenue of approach, and the vulnerabilities that they could exploit. It sounds like they did none of that except for vehicle bombs. And if this had been a multi-pronged attack, this probably could have been successful. If one person had run in there with a bomb, exploded it, you could have had 5 other people run in, one after another, and just lay waste to that room.
And that was the concern in the room, Jonathan, to be clear. Like, we're wondering, is there something else following? Carly.
Jonathan, when it comes to the suspect himself, his sister told investigators that he had been increasingly radical and made increasingly radical statements and often spoke about doing, quote, something to address issues in the world. He had purchased 2 handguns and a shotgun, which he stored at his parents' house without his parents' knowledge. He would regularly train at a shooting range, and he was part of a group called the Wide Awakes and attended a No Kings protest in California. So there were signs there that he was spinning towards violence and extremism. Was it the responsibility of a family member to intervene sooner?
I would think so. And I've talked about this for a long time. I think that there needs to be a system worked out where when somebody reports an individual like this, but they've not broken a crime, if their behavior is odd enough, that goes in a database. And that way, the totality of the circumstances, I use this term all the time, law enforcement will have the totality of someone's behavior. They had run-ins with law enforcement 20 times but never been arrested? Those 20 times will be on that database. How violent were they? That's on that database. It's not a complicated issue to discover. We do these in schools all the time. When somebody does a shooting, we say, oh, yeah, we knew that person was a problem. We just need to make that information known to the right people so that they can eventually at least interview someone. But that doesn't happen. And why? Because, I do threat assessments almost daily for the entertainment industry. That's what my company does. And we do crisis management. And the one term that drives me crazy is that's not how we do it. So things never change.
Yeah.
Another thing was that's not how we do it. We just happened to hold this event at a hotel, to your earlier point, where anybody can come with any kind of luggage and just stay in the hotel this weekend, provided they have the money to do so. And to your overall point, Jonathan, that needs to change because this did not work out this time.
And also, the suspect is reportedly not complying with police, and he's going to appear in court later today. So we are going to see how all that goes.
Final word, Jonathan.
Yeah, really quickly here.
Final word is, something has to change. The president should not have been on that stage for 30 seconds after the gunshots happened. And the person who can change this is the president and the director of DHS. Secret Service needs to go back to the Treasury Department and get out of DHS because it was broken once they put it in there.
Good point.
Jonathan Gilliam, former Navy SEAL and FBI Special Agent, we thank you so much.
Yeah.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.